You guys would tell me if I had paint on me, right? And welcome to the newly renovated library. It has been a truly remarkable week here. And by remarkable I mean that I have pulled off a home designs challenge in what can only be described as the most humid part of Satan's butt crack. And you can tell that it's humid in Scotland because my hair looks like this. But if there's one thing that we Scots are known for, it's persevering through adversity. So here I am to bring you the mid-year freak-out tag. Because if I'm freaking out about everything else in my life, I might as well add books. I'm sure if you've hung around BookTube for more than 5 minutes that you will be aware of the mid-year freak-out tag. The tag wherein we look at all of the books that we've read up until this point and make ourselves feel very unaccomplished for your pleasure. As always, both the questions and the original creator of the tag will be linked down below. Let's go. Question 1 is the best book that you have read so far in 2021, and if you guessed that I did indeed say both 2020 and 2018 in the 2 previous takes, then you were right. I always just print off my questions from my original video and I never change the date, and then I just read what's on the paper. And I don't know, apparently I'm also traumatised by 2020, I couldn't say why. I thought I was going to end up with a debate for this question, but it turns out that when I came to write down the answer on this here little piece of paper, there was only one book that would do, and that was of course 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. I say of course because I have been hinting since last month that I read a thriller book that was perhaps the best thriller that I had read in years, and then I told you in my TBR that I was reading another book this month by that author. I don't think it took much maths to marry the two up. I don't think this is a spoiler. 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton is a thriller which takes place over the course of 3 hours, kind of does what it says on the tin, and it focuses on a very sort of progressive, forward-thinking school. It's very mixed. There's a lot of different gender and sexuality expression in the school. Everybody is welcomed, and it's kind of a school that's in the middle of nowhere. It's set back off a really, really long dirt road in the middle of some beautiful forests by a beach, and completely out of the blue, one winter day, this school is attacked by a school shooter. What follows is us seeing this incident through the eyes of various different people, some children who are in the school and also outside of it, some teachers who are helping to keep the kids safe and isolated, and also from a forensic psychologist who gets dispatched as part of a specialist unit who have trained for this kind of scenario. And the way that Rosamund Lupton has made this not just a page-turning thriller that I read in 2 bites, 2 massive chunks, finished it, needed more immediately, bought more of her books, like literally straight away broke the book buying ban to buy more of her books, and I could not care less because I needed them. So not only is it that, not only is it a thriller that makes you just race through to the end because you need to know what happens, but it is also a really poignant take on current events in Britain, on racism, on terrorism, on inclusion. It's just... Question 2 is, what is the best sequel that you have read so far in 2021? You guys thought I was going to get it wrong again, didn't you? Well, I didn't, because I changed it on my little bit of paper after the last time. Usually I have way more context for this question, because normally, although I do read a lot of standalones, I read a lot of series. It turns out that this year, not so much. This year, out of the crap ton of books I've read, which by the way is still not enough books to satisfy my brain, I apparently have only read a teeny tiny portion of sequels, which is ironic, being as like last month I called myself out with a video about all my unfinished series. What? I don't feel guilty, you feel guilty. So for this question, I am going to go with a book that I am reading right now, a book that was on my TBR for July, and that is, of course, European Travels for the Monstrous Gentlewoman by Theodora Goss. This is the second in the Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter series, which I have talked about so much that I think next time I say it, BookTube's just gonna bleep me out. Please stop mentioning that book. I don't think think I really need to tell you more about this series. It's a feminist take of various different classic horror novels told from the perspectives of the daughters of those creatures like Frankenstein and Dracula and etc, etc, etc. It's one of the best books that I've ever read, and this is not disappointing in the slightest. It is, however, a meteoric chunk of a book. I could use it as a doorstop. It's like the first and second book together plus a third. Did you see how dark it got in that last clip? I'm waiting for a thunderstorm. I'm summoning the rain. Problem is, I'm more of like a sea witch crossed with a kitchen witch, so rain's not really in my wheelhouse. And I would say that I would stop moaning about the weather soon, but that would be a lie. Question 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to, and for that one I am going to go for Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. In fact, do you know what? That's just not going to cut it, is it? That picture's just not going to cut it. Structural integrity has been compromised. Here she is in all of her glory. Isn't she stunning? So in Greek mythology, Ariadne was absolutely in love with Theseus, and after he slew the Minotaur in the labyrinth, she was the one who helped him get out. Because our girl is freaking fearless. I've said this a few times on my channel. I studied a little bit of Greek and Roman mythology when I was doing my literature degree, but I came to it really, really late, and I don't really know as much as I would like to about it. And so in addition to picking up some non-fiction and some classical Greek and Roman texts, I have also started to pick up some retellings, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a little bit of a trend recently in retellings focusing on the women of Greek and Roman mythology, and I am all for radical feminism being applied to Greek and Roman myth. It is a mild shame that Katie Lowe, you know, the one who wrote The Furies, does blurb the back of this, but I'm just gonna ignore it and pretend that I do not see it. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I did do a video quite recently where I talked about most of my anticipated releases for the whole year, so I'll link that like above and below and you can go find that. But a book that I don't think that I featured on there was She Who Became the Sun. So this is kind of a fantasy, queer, adult retelling of the way that the Ming Dynasty came about. Yeah, that face that you're making right now is the exact reason that I pressed pre-order on this book, like instantly. So if I remember correctly, this one is set mid-1300s in China when it's under Mongol rule and a lot of its people are starving. In amongst this, we follow the Zhou family. Their 8th son has been given this huge prophecy that he is going to do something great. He's going to deliver them from the situation that they are in. But when an attack happens on their village, their 8th son is killed. Someone who does not die, however, is the 2nd child in that family, a daughter who is absolutely charged with the will to survive. She is determined that she is going to get out of her current circumstances and that she is going to be the one to save her family. And so she takes on her dead brother's identity and she goes to war. Weirdly, I found out about this one through Samantha Shannon, who of course wrote The Bone Season and Priory of the Orange Tree, when she was recommending LGBTQI+ literature that she'd really loved, and so I'm very excited for this one. Next up, question 5, the one that you guys really like it when I answer, is the biggest disappointment of the year. So I'm going to discount books that I have just outright absolutely hated, because most of them you've heard about in some detail in my tops and bottoms videos so far for this year. Instead, I'm going to focus on a book that I thought that I was going to really love, and instead I just kind of felt very meh about it. That book is of course The Alibi Girl by C.J. Skuse. You guys know that I absolutely loved Sweetpea by C.J. Skuse, but what I'm finding is that for me, Sweetpea might have been a bit of a fluke, because Sweetpea is actually the start of a series of thriller books by C.J. Skuse, and I feel like they've got progressively worse as they have gone on, to the point where I've just started the 4th book and I already kind of don't want to pick it up. But all of C.J. Skuse's books have a really good premise, like a premise that I think, ooh, that's super original and I'm going to be super engaged. And instead, what seems to end up happening, and what happened with The Alibi Girl, is that I'm just bored. The Alibi Girl is essentially about a woman who has had to run away from her life. She's in witness protection. She comes up with multiple identities in a day so that people will not find her. But she also has a small child in tow, which is not something that's on any of the blurbs, and I wouldn't have picked it up if I'd known that it focused on her and also like a very small baby. Fair play to you if you enjoy reading thrillers where like kids take a big portion of it, but it's just not really my thing. And we get absolutely thrown into this scenario at the start of this book. It's immediately a 10. We're so panicked, we're so scared all the time that there's just nowhere to go. And what CJ Skuse kind of tried to do was give the humour as a bit of emotional relief, but it doesn't really land. Just kind of like, that's not funny. This person could die like the whole time. The pacing is also weirdly off. Like, we stay at one level through 2/3 of it, and then all of a sudden it's like all these things happen. And I just wanted to like it so hard, but just pants. Question 6 is your biggest surprise, and for this I am definitely picking A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This is the first in the Discovery of Witches trilogy. It is about a witch who is in Oxford in England, and she is an ancient historian. She looks at ancient magical texts, and one day while requesting old textbooks from the Bodleian Library, she summons an ancient magical text, and when she opens it, she kind of attracts a lot of magic to the one spot. Because in this world there are vampires, demons and witches, and they're all kind of like undercover. The real world doesn't really know that they exist. And she finds herself as a lone witch who has chosen not to practice magic because of a thing that happened with her parents in her past, kind of at the mercy of a lot of forces that she has no say in. And also under the particular attentions of one vampire, one very old, very strange vampire. I loved the reading experience for this, and I was so shocked because so many people had told me that it was like either plodding or boring, or that it was flowery, which I didn't find that it was at all, or that it was kind of insta-lovey, which I also didn't find that it was at all. I would also really recommend the audiobooks for these. The narrator does a really great job with everything except a Scottish accent, which, I mean, frankly is just a theme in audiobooks. Question 7 is favourite new author, either a debut author or a new to me author, and I think I also have a predictable answer for this one. I'm gonna give you a second. You can leave your vote in the comments and tell me if you got it right. My favourite new to me author is Lisa Jewell. After reading The Family Upstairs, I became just a little bit obsessed with Lisa Jewell. From this yellow spine along this shelf, there's quite a lot of Lisa Jewell books now on my thriller shelves, and I don't think I'm sorry about it. I think with thrillers, sometimes you hit upon an author who does all of your favourite things in one place. So for me, Lisa Jewell does primarily family-based thrillers. Weird, kind of damaged, quirky or strange family relationships. She does a lot of things like there was a thing that happened 40 years ago and now we're investigating it stuff, which I really love. And she does female characters like all of them are complex and layered and so many more things than you would expect from them. The one that I've just read, which I think is Invisible Girl, I get confused with her titles quite a lot. That would be my only complaint. We need better titles, Lisa. But the one that I just read takes the like missing girl trope and does a whole different thing with it, and I'll stop talking about it now, but go read Lisa Jewell books. Question 8 is newest fictional crush, and I have historically struggled to answer this one just a little bit, but for some reason it was really easy this year. My newest favourite fictional crush is Alexandra Mountbatten from the Governess Game, which is the second book in Tessa Dare's Girl Meets Duke series. This is a historical romance series. There will be 4 of them. The last book is still pending a release date, and each book in this quartet follows a very different friend. All of these women are definitely ladies, but they're a little bit unconventional in their ladiness. Alexandra has the most interesting backstory ever. She was the daughter of a sea captain, like a merchant trader, so she grew up on the sea, and he taught her to wind and care for clocks, which is the thing that she now does for most of London's like high society. There was no digital clock that knew the real time in the world, so Alexandra had to keep everybody's timepieces wound and cared for perfectly so that they didn't lose so much as a minute. And one day she goes to ask if a particular household would like her services, and she kind of never leaves. She is tenacious and she is getting things done, and she will not be walked over, and oh, I love her. Question 9 is my newest favourite character, and for this one I can't tell you. That's right, I'm not telling you. I'm answering question 9 with a non-answer. Because you see, my newest favourite character features in The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This series is most easily described by Samantha Shannon herself as a dystopian on an epic fantasy scale. We are in a slightly future London wherein the Scion government has come to power. In this society there are clairvoyants, lots of different kinds of them, who can interact with ghosts and see things in the ether and predict the future. There are people who use tarot cards, there are people who can travel outside of their body, and we follow Paige Mahoney as she accidentally kills a guard with her powers and has to go on the run, but she is not picked up by the people who she expects to be picked up by. The reason that I can't tell you my favourite character is because of what happens to them in The Bone Season, and specifically I don't want anybody to give me spoilers for future books in the series, because a lot of people feel passionately about this series and apparently I am one of them. And as well meaning as you all are, you're terrible at keeping secrets. Like, awful at keeping secrets. So I'ma just keep this one tight to my chest. And when I have finished the 4 novels and novellas that are out to date, I will tell you who my favourite character is. I promise. Coming in at number 10, we have got a book that made you cry. I don't often cry like real big out loud tears when I read a book. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm deeply emotionally affected by them, but the actual like physical act of crying does not always happen. However, it happened repeatedly when reading this book, so much so that I was very glad that I read almost the entire thing while locked in a bath. So nobody could see me cry, which was good for everybody involved. The book that I'm talking about is What My Mother and I Don't Talk About, which is an essay collection edited by Michele Filgate. And it is a collection of 15 different published authors, some of whom have written fiction, some of whom have written memoirs, some of whom have written essays. One of them is Carmen Maria Machado, for example. And they are all talking about their experiences with their mother and the unsaid things in their relationship, and there is a whole breadth of different experience in here. Some people are really close to their mothers, some people have lost their mothers, some people have cut their mothers out of their lives, some people had really toxic relationships with their mothers. And just as all of these authors have completely different styles, so are these essays all written in completely different styles. Some of them feel kind of like coffee and catch up, some of them start with you not knowing what the relationship is with that person's mother until you get to the end and there's like a reveal. One of them, the one that Melissa Febos wrote, uses mythology to look at her relationship with her mother, who was a psychotherapist, and so they had a lot of really weird closeness in their relationship, and they're just great. They're all so unique, they're so different, and it absolutely blew my mind. It is one of my favourite like memoir collections ever. It's just so good. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and this one was really easy to answer. It popped immediately into my head, and that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This series is definitely beloved on BookTube, and I'm sure you know everything about it already, but just in case you don't, this series follows the Brown sisters. We have Chloe, Danny and Eve, and I believe they're in age order that way as well. I spent so much time smiling because I felt really seen and really represented. I have definitely seen this feedback from a few other people in our community who also struggle with chronic illness. It's such a complex thing to try and represent and get right, and it was just so good. I think there's a tendency when any kind of illness is represented in fiction to make it kind of like a martyr saviour thing, or in less extreme examples to kind of only represent it when that person is either really well or really laid low with it, and there's like nothing in between, whereas like for me chronic illness is a sliding scale of how okay I am on that day and how okay I am to like have human interaction versus do physical things. And that was something that I think that Talia Hibbert just really got right. I was just so impressed. I was so impressed. I smiled my whole way through this one. It was great. Question 12 is just never one that I look forward to, and I consider changing it to something different every year because it is what is the favourite book to movie adaptation that you've seen this year. And I don't watch a lot of movies. I am a series watcher. In the same way that I love a huge long fantasy series with loads of character development, that's what I look for when I watch TV. So for this one I am going to go with my favourite series adaptation. But again, it's kind of an odd one because I haven't read the book. I now own it because of the series, which is a thing that I've kind of done backwards again. I kind of seem to do that with TV series. I end up really loving it and then going back and enjoying the book. But that series is of course The Queen's Gambit, which is based on the book by Walter Trevis. This series and also book follows Beth Harmon, who at the age of 8 ends up in an orphanage. It is not the best orphanage in the world. It only takes in girls, and in order to keep them compliant it gives them hallucinogenic drugs. While she's in the orphanage, however, she wanders into the caretaker's room one day and she sees a chessboard and she's fascinated, and the caretaker then teaches her to play chess, or rather teaches her the game and then is shown how to play chess by Beth, who has just one of these like insanely natural talents at it. I am very excited to read the book for this one because I absolutely loved the series. Lovely Wife Helen and I just watched the whole thing really quickly back to back, and I'm told that the series is a really faithful adaptation from the book, which makes me happy. So I'm gonna do it kind of backwards. Here it is. I'm gonna read this one. I'm actually really pleased that it's got a series tie-in edition cover for this because it's Beth's face. But yeah, seriously, next year when we do this I need to make question 12 different. What do you think I should change it to? Question 13 is your favourite video that you've made so far this year, and for me it absolutely has to be reading like I did during a childhood summer. This was a vlog that I did where I got 3 new series to try. One of them was the books by Luke Jennings that Killing Eve is based on. One of them was A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, and the other one was the Murder Most Ladylike series by Robin Stevens. And I tried all of the first books in the series for those to see if I liked them or not. But I did it by rereading the way that I would have done during a childhood summer vacation where I just had infinite time to read and not have any other responsibilities. This video also includes like a ton of clips of my childhood holidays and little Leanne being adorable slash very annoying, depending on whether you like kids or not, I guess. It was just so much fun to put together. It was so nostalgic and it gave me lots of ideas for future vlogs too. Definitely that one. Question 14 is the most beautiful book that you have bought or received this year, and I have some serious contenders for this year, guys. So first up, we obviously have Ariadne because like then we obviously have the cover of In Deeper Waters. This is a YA pirate queer romance. Then we've got the Mary Shelley Club, which is a YA horror slash thriller based on horror tropes. I think the cover of The Unbroken is absolutely stunning. The Fairy Loot edition of Witches Steeped in Gold is one of the most beautiful things I've ever held in my hands. It's pretty irrepressible, let's be honest. But the book that for me just blows all of the rest of them absolutely out of the water is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. This cover is just my entire ideal aesthetic in one image. We have snakes, we have birds, we have cottagecore, we have herbs, we have witchy things. The spine is a delight to behold. Even all the little different artworks on the chapter headings, just everything about this is perfect for me. Absolutely perfect. And finally we have question 15, aka the question that Leanne can absolutely never answer just one book to ever. So here are a range of answers, all of which I need to get to very soon. Priory of the Orange Tree also needs to happen while we're talking about fantasy. I want to get to Careless this year. I want to get to True Story this year. Ace of Spades, The Hollow Places, Malibu Rising, The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl, because then I will have finished a series this year. Of course, we're currently doing Graceling along, so I need to read Fire and Bitter Blue and Winterkeep by the end of the year. And then many, countless other horrors and thrillers. The most pressing one for me right now, I think, is Unwell Women. That's the one that I most want to read by the end of the year, I think. Maybe. So that's it, guys. Can we believe that once again it was time for the mid-year freakout tag, and once again it is over. And I actually did it exactly mid-year for a change. Who even is she? So as always, guys, if you have read any of the books that I have mentioned to date, please let me know what you thought about them down below. Did you agree with some of my choices, or were yours like vastly different? Tell me your best and most disappointing book of the year in the comments. I love that. We stand opinions on this channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider whacking that like button before you leave. And if you're new here, why don't you subscribe? There are more best of lists coming all the time. It's one of my favourite things to make. And I will speak to all of you guys soon. Bye! Are you just completely over me? Do you want me to shut up? And yes, that is an empty picture frame. I'm still decorating, okay? Let me live.